This QDS video will review how to produce documentation for your questionnaire, including printable versions, codebooks, and a change history. In QDS, you can produce documentation for your survey at any time during development. One option is to build a printable version that can be used for review and to easily share with others. It includes all question and response text, as well as any skips, edits, or calculated variables you've programmed. It can be built for either interviewer or self-administration. However, the primary form of documentation for your questionnaire is a code book. By default, it lists all data and automatic variable elements, and there are options to include all other types of elements such as skips, edits, or information. There's also a color coding option. You can produce a code book in either rich text format, to be viewed in any word processing program, or in a comma-separated values format for importing into a spreadsheet. You can also produce a change history file that's in rich text format that will list all modifications made to your specifications file, as well as annotations if you would like that you can enter at any point during development. All of this can be very useful for documenting reasons for changes. We'll take a look at how to produce all of these types of documentation and what options you can use in our QDS sample file. First, we will produce printable questionnaires. But before building those, we do want to take a look at what options we can set by going to the main menu and going to Options and then Build. And if we look under Select a Build Type, we can expand the trees for both paper questionnaire, interviewer, and self-admin type. Note that even though you may never plan to actually administer your questionnaire on paper, these forms of documentation are very useful for reviewing and sharing. Both of these formats have, as you can see, layout and fonts options. Under Layout for each, you can select orientation, margins, and separation between questions or responses. The only options that differ between these two are under self-admin. There's an option to hide numeric code values. We're going to have this checked for our example. After you've made your selection, select OK to close the window. To build either of those documentation types, you're going to go to the main menu again and select Build and one of the first two options. Note that you can build these for any language in your survey. Just always make sure that the language that you want to build is selected in that language box. First, we're going to choose the interviewer type, and after we choose that, you can see the Save dialog box, and the default file name is listed there, which you'll see is just the file name for the file, plus the language designator, plus QX, and is going to be saved as a rich text file. Note that you could also select options from here from the Options button, but since we've already selected that, we're just going to go ahead and select Save. QDS will ask if we'd like to open the file now, which we're going to do in our default word processing program. You can see that all information screens, question text, and responses are listed. And if you go through and take a look, you can see that skips reference question numbers. Here in this example, there is an if question 5 is not equal to 6, then it's going to skip to question 7. And this is also true for automatic variable calculations that reference question numbers, as in an example right here. and as well as for edits that will list the conditions and then messages if that was applicable. Next, we're going to go back to our sample file and now build the self-admin type. So again, we'll go to Build and now select that second option. This works the same, except that you'll just note that in the file name box, the default name includes self. Once again, we'll go ahead and select Save, and we're going to choose to open it. The format is very similar. However, as you can see, there are no code values listed since we selected that option, and the default layout is a bit more targeted for using for self-administration. The most useful type of documentation for your questionnaire, though, is a codebook. Before we build it, let's take a look at some of what's included. One very useful detail is the item ID, which is used in all header, information, skip, and edit elements. This value is assigned by default whenever you validate your questionnaire, which you do by going to Tools and then Validate, or you can always select that Validate button on the toolbar. This identifies any programming errors that QDS detects, but at the same time, it also automatically updates question numbering as well as the item IDs. Note that your questionnaire is also automatically validated whenever you build any type of product or module. If you do receive an error, you need to fix it before proceeding. See our QDS online help for more details about validating. Now, if we go ahead and take a look at one of our information elements, you can see that this one has been assigned the item ID in the box automatically of info-2 since it is the second info element. If we go down a bit, you can see our first skip element here is assigned skip 1 because it's our first skip element. Now, if you would like to customize any of these item IDs, you can do that by just typing over and replacing the automatically assigned ID in the box. We're going to change this to Educ Other to document that this is the skip for the Education Other Specify item. Note that all item IDs do need to be unique, and if you accidentally create one that's not, it will be flagged as an error during validation. So we're going to go down in our survey and take a look at a couple of the edits, and we're also going to customize these. We're going to call this first about cigarette use to edit cig, and then the second edit we're going to change to edit cig days to help us remember what this particular edit is referencing. Next, we'll take a look at setting options for codebooks by going to Options and then Build and selecting Codebook. By default, in all codebooks, data elements and automatic variables are included. However, to include some other options, you'll need to check these boxes. For example, to include data element and automatic element notes, you'll check this first option. To include other types of elements in your codebook, you can go ahead and select these other check boxes, which we're going to check all of those. If you would like to include component variables for date, time of day, and time span responses, you can check this last item under Include here. And just for RTF format, you can choose to have colors to distinguish element types. And for CSV format only, which is the type that can be opened in a spreadsheet program, you can choose to use SAS compliant names for value labels. We're going to go ahead and check both of those, and when we're done, we'll select OK. Next, to create our codebook, we'll go to the Build menu and select Codebook. Just like with building any other type of module, you can build a codebook for any language in your survey. Once again, just make sure that the language you want is selected in that language box. Note that the default codebook name is just the file name plus codebook, and then under Save as Type, the default is RTF format, so we're going to do that one first. And just with like other build types, you can access build options from that button there, but since we've already done that, we're going to go ahead and select Save and then Yes to open in our default word processor. First, you can see that the codebook includes several columns, such as question, which is either question number or item ID listed there, then the variable name, and for data elements only, you'll see label, code values, and length. For date type questions, such as here, what is your date of birth, you'll notice that all the components of year, month, and day are included because we selected that option. In addition, under the day choice, you can see that we specified that missing is allowable. It notes that there right next to the range, and we had also included a note there. Next, you can see that all of our element types are color-coded, as we mentioned before, such as we have orange for our skips, and we have blue for our information elements, purple for automatic variables. This is just like they're coded in the Design Studio. If we go all the way to the end, we can see that the total number of variables listed here, that was 36, and the identifier variable or variables are listed, which for this particular example was subject. Next, we want to create a codebook in comma-separated values format that can be used for importing into any spreadsheet program. Once again, we're going to go to that Build menu and select Codebook. And this time, under that Save as Type box, we're going to switch it so that it's the Codebook CSV or comma delimited choice. For this format, after we select Save, QDS is going to let us know that 2 files have been saved and the names. Both of them have the extension .csv. One of them has also the word values at the end of that. We are going to import each of these into a spreadsheet program and then take a look at how they're laid out. In any spreadsheet program such as Microsoft Excel, you can go to the Open dialog box and then under File Types, make sure that this is set to text files or similar so that you can see the comma delimited files listed in your folder or directory. Note that this will work slightly differently depending upon what spreadsheet program and version you are using. Then you can go ahead and select the main codebook file and select Open. After you do that, you'll see something like a text import wizard. You're going to want to make sure that you choose the delimited option and then you can select Next. Then you're going to want to make sure that you have the comma option chosen as your delimiter and then select Next. And then after that, you can generally select Finish. After you do that, you're going to see all of the data in columns in your spreadsheet. In the spreadsheet, you'll notice that the tab has the file name, which here was just Study Codebook, and the very first row contains the labels such as Studio Order. This is specific to only the comma delimited type codebook that just lists all of the order of the items. You'll see the next choice here is element type followed by data type, variable name, variable label, composite, which indicates if it is a composite type variable, and then item ID, which we talked about. If we go down in the item ID column, you can see the item IDs that we renamed to custom IDs, such as our skip education other item. And if we go down, we can also see those edit ones that we changed. And going across, you can see that all of the information that's in the other code book is also here, in addition to other information such as that studio order, such as the question text, any expressions, the destination, as well as notes if those were entered, lengths, minimum, maximum, and the value labels. Note that the value codes are going to be included in that second file that we're going to take a look at in just a moment. Then we're going to go through that same text to columns process with that second file, which, as you recall, was study codebook values. And this is where all of your values are listed, such as for gender, we have a value of 2 for female and 1 for male. We have the values of 0 all the way to 49 for our states, and so on, going down through our entire survey. Every item that had code values is listed here. Another type of documentation you can produce for your questionnaire is called a change history file. It lists all modifications made during development. Note that because of this, QDS is always retaining all of this change information for the history. So you really should periodically discard this information to prevent your file from becoming too large, particularly when you're still making continual changes to your file. So let's take a look at how you can do this. So go to File and then the Save a Copy As option, and this is going to open up the Save As Copy dialog box. In that file name box, you'll just see the default name, which will be copy of the name of your file. Then you can check one of these option choices at the bottom that have to do with discarding the undue information. Now, if you want to keep a backup of all of that change information so it can be retained, choose this first option here. Just check that box and it will save all of that information in the copy. We're going to go to choose that now and then select Save. Towards the end of questionnaire development, it is very useful, though, to keep track of final version changes using the history documentation with annotations. So we're going to go ahead and make a couple of final changes to our file so that you can see how that looks. So we're going to go down in our file, and in the health section, we're going to decide that we want to delete a question. We're going to delete this current state of health item and select delete element. Next, we've decided that we want to add new response categories to our health questions, and that was on a response card. So we're going to go to Tools, Response Card, and we're going to select our health rating responses, and we're going to edit those, and we're going to add a new category of every day and select OK. For these, we want to add explanations with an annotation. So to add annotations, we will go to Tools and then Change History, and this brings up the Change History annotation box. And first we're going to go ahead and add our title, which is going to be Health Section Changes, and we will add a username, and then we'll go ahead and add our annotation. And all of this information is going to be included in our change history report. Then we'll select OK, and it will let us know that the annotation was added to the history. We're going to go down and make one more slight change to our thank you information element. We've added some additional text there, and then we will select OK. Next, we'll produce our change history by going to Build and then Change History. And this will bring up our Save As dialog box, and you'll notice that the file name does include the word history in it, and then we'll click Save. And QDS will just ask us if we'd like to open the report now, which we will go ahead and do. You can see that our change history file has several columns. The first of those is element type, which indicates the type or if it was an annotation. And you can see here where we changed the information element, as we mentioned, and then we had deleted that data element. The next column shows element number, which comes from the list view. The next item is the type of action, or if it was an annotation, it will list the initials there. Then under title, it will list the text or the annotation title, and then the question text if that was applicable, or the annotation description, and finally the information about what was changed, and then the date and time. All of these features that we have produced, the printable version questionnaires, codebooks, and change history, are all great ways to easily keep your documentation up to date. To learn more about all these different types of documentation, please see QDS Online Help or other Design Studio videos.